Coming up, the Diné composer reinventing music is a new MacArthur Fellow. We hear how a Bic pen defines a Phoenix artist, and Holly Cook Macarro shares the latest developments in the House still not having a speaker. Join us for those interviews, plus headlines ahead on the ICT Newscast.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
The ICT Newscast is sponsored by the Indian Land Tenure Foundation, a nonprofit organization serving American Indian nations and people in the recovery and control of their rightful homelands. On the web at iltf.org.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Aaliyah Chavez comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
Amadawa Hopa, thank you for joining us. I am Aaliyah Chavez. We begin today in Australia, where Indigenous campaigners who wanted to create an advisory body representing Indigenous people are now calling its rejection a shameful act. The authors of the constitutional amendment said social media and mainstream media had unleashed a, quote, tsunami of racism against Aboriginal people during the referendum campaign. The measure was defeated as 61% of Australians voted no on October 14th. The organizers sent an open letter to federal lawmakers saying the result of the vote was so appalling and mean-spirited as to be utterly unbelievable. Because of this, supporters of the referendum flew Aboriginal flags at half-staff across Australia. In South Dakota, a Native American family is grieving the loss of their loved one, all while waiting for answers. Over a month ago, Terrence Little Thunder was riding his motorcycle in Rapid City when a vehicle struck him and drove away. The injuries killed the 42-year-old Cheyenne River Lakota citizen a few days later. Little Thunder was an award-winning basketball player at Haskell University, standing 6 feet and 11 inches tall. Just last week, the Rapid City Police Department notified his family they had information about a Chevy Tahoe they suspect was involved and that it had been found on the Pine Ridge Reservation. They also added the vehicle could have been modified to conceal the damage from the motorcycle impact. So far, no arrests have been made. The Cheyenne River Sioux Council is offering a reward of $20,000 for anyone with more information. In Nevada, some Native people are continuing to speak out against lithium mining on their sacred lands. The Canadian firm Lithium Americas has federal approval to mine the Thacker Pass area. The 6,000-acre site is currently under construction and has already been stalled by a number of legal challenges from environmentalists and regional tribes. Those in favor of the mine say it is important because lithium is critical for creating batteries for electric vehicles. The Bureau of Land Management is required to consult with affected tribes for projects like this, but some, including the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, say their tribal nations were not included. The project has since caused division between the Fort McDermott tribe, which is believed to be the only nation that has a community benefits agreement with the mining company. So far, Lithium Americas estimates the mine at Thacker Pass could provide enough lithium for 1 million electric vehicles a year in its first phase of planning. Well, the highly anticipated film Killers of the Flower Moon hit theaters everywhere this weekend, and Indigenous folks are speaking out. Mohawk actress Devery Jacobs took to social media saying, quote, "I don't feel that these very real people were shown honor or dignity in the horrific portrayal of their deaths." She added that this film centers a white perspective. The movie, starring Blackfeet actor Lily Gladstone, follows the deaths of Osage people in the 1920s after oil was found on their lands. Director Martin Scorsese previously said on red carpet events that he rewrote some of the script after talking and getting to know citizens of the Osage Nation. Christopher Coate, the Osage language consultant on the film, said he wished the story was told from Molly Burkhart's perspective, who is Osage herself. He shared similar sentiments to Jacob, saying Molly's story was largely told from the perspective of her white husband, Ernest Burkhart. The film, however, has many supporters from the Osage community, including Chief Jeffrey Standing Bear.
It's been one of the great pleasures of my life to have met him and spend some time around him. He's just a really good person. And that's what it took. It took somebody that could know that we've been betrayed for hundreds of years. And then he wrote a story about betrayal of trust. And that it took that kind of person. And he knows the people that think like him and feel like him in this business, and he brings them together. I saw it.
Well, a popular Alaska Native artist will soon have their work displayed on the slopes. Tlingit and Athabascan artist Crystal Whirl is one of the newest designers for Colorado-based company Weston Snowboards. Whirl's traditional form-line art style will be featured on snowboards and skis, depicting a salmon and a Tlingit term meaning the salmon way of life. The artist hopes the designs help raise awareness to the issue of salmon harvesting in Alaska. It is a crisis for Alaska Native people who rely on salmon for sustenance. That comes as many fish camps and fish harvesting was canceled due to low salmon numbers. In addition to the Weston ski and snowboard line, a collection of merchandise featuring Whirl's artwork will also be sold, with profits set to be donated to various salmon funds. Whirl is already known for making skateboards alongside her brother Rico. And those are the headlines for the ICT Newscast. A Navajo composer has been selected for this year's MacArthur Fellowship. It is sometimes nicknamed the Genius Grant and comes with an $800,000 prize. Raven Chacon was recognized for creating musical works that cut across boundaries of visual art and performance to illuminate landscapes, their inhabitants, and histories. ICT's Shirley Sneve has this interview.
I'm really honored that I got this recognition and this award. And I think in that statement, what they're talking about is just the span of mediums that I work in. And so even though a lot of my work is in music and sound, it's branched out into these other areas. It's been recognized in the visual arts and a realm. It's been something that also might incorporate film and video and performance. And so, all of this is a means to tell history, to tell a story, to tell concerns of what is happening on our lands.
You're Diné from New Mexico. How has that heritage influenced your work?
I think people are always asking that question, and it actually irks me, but not from Indian country today, because this is an opportunity for me to talk back, to explain to my own community, to share how where I come from has been an influence. And I think what irks me about that question is people are always seeking out a musical answer there. I think people are always, it always feels anthropological, saying like, well, is there a rhythm? Is there a melody that I could point to that would, be seen as an influence? And I always say, well, no, I think overall, thinking about where one comes from, thinking about the creation stories of where we come from, the world views, all the way up through contemporary concerns, are inherently going to end up in somebody's work. And I think the sounds that I make, even though they might not directly sound like they are coming from, let's say, a song or any kind of musical tradition, I think one can hear this kind of passage of time, this kind of urgency of these concerns. And for me, the best way to show that is through noises, sounds that are unconventional to, let's say, the orchestra. And that's been a way for me to kind of relay these topics, these concepts. And that's my way of telling stories.
We all carry baggage, if you want, or a history behind us. What I like about your music is that you really can't say it's Navajo or Diné, and you really can't say it's Western. I mean, you've just like crashed these barriers, and even the concept of what is music and what is a musical instrument and how do you write music, you've really blown that up.
Well, I mean, for me, it was just to make a sound that I had never heard before, and of course, later I became aware of a whole community of experimental musicians. But when I was a younger musician and artist, I was always just trying to make my own instruments, and I was doing a lot of different kinds of audio experiments, a lot of manipulations of tape, cassette tapes, putting cassette tapes in backwards into their shells. One thing I back to this question about, or maybe this comment that I receive often is people saying, and of course as non-native saying, "Oh, I can hear the landscape in your music," and that used to really bother me. But then it got me thinking, I can't be too mad at that, because what I used to do is drive around Navajo Nation with a microphone out the window and just speed up and slow down and capture the wind, the manufactured wind of my Chevy Cavalier driving on these dirt roads. And that was another instrument. That was another musical instrument. But in a way, that was gathering the sounds from wherever I was. And whatever that meant to do that action became the music.
Musical composition by nature is a solitary occupation. I mean, it comes from your head and you put it on paper or tape or whatever, record it. And then that becomes ultimately a partnership in a way, in order to get it performed with individuals and communities. What is that like for you?
It might start as an isolated idea, something that I dream about or something that comes to me. But ultimately, musicians have to be very comfortable collaborating with others. I mean, anybody who's been in a band needs to know how to collaborate and be a good partner in that relationship. And so I think that mentality that musicians have, or that way of working, has helped me in some of these other mediums. I mean, it led to this collaboration with Post Commodity, being a member of them for 10 years, working collaboratively with other people. The biggest project I did, or one of the big projects I did recently, was working on an opera, and there was 100 people involved in that collaboration. And so I think even though we talk about this kind of solitary creativity, I think it ultimately needs to be in collaboration with others. And so thinking too of sharing this knowledge or this work. And one of the other things that I do is teach. So I teach young people on the Navajo reservation and Hopi communities as part of a project called the Native American Composer Apprentice Project. And so that's a way to kind of expand this knowledge, or even still kind of bend this tradition of classical music, and having that extend to these young Native composers is a new way of making this kind of radical music.
Well, thank you, Raven Chacon, a new MacArthur Fellow. I'm glad you could join us.
Thank you, Shirley.
Last year, Raven Chacon was awarded a Pulitzer Prize in Music for Voiceless Mass. It was commissioned by Plymouth Church UCC, and it was composed specifically for the Nichols and Simpson organ at the Cathedral of St. John the Evangelist in Milwaukee. It is easy to imagine the tools of an artist: canvas, brushes, and oil. But what about something less, such as art from an ordinary writing instrument? ICT's Demi Dupavillon has this profile of an artist and his pens.
Quinn Honanie is an artist from northern Arizona that travels to indigenous art shows and festivals. At first glance, his drawings are so real you would think they were made from the finest supplies. In reality, he bought them from the dollar store.
My medium is actually Sharpie markers and a ballpoint pen. I usually use either a black ballpoint pen or a blue ballpoint pen. So these are some of my pieces that I've created. This is one of my more larger scale pieces here. It's all done in a blue ballpoint pen, and what I have depicted are Hilili or disciplinary kachinas, and but here I actually have them as dancers, and so I have singers or goyimsis or mudheads on top singing for them, and all of our ceremonies are a prayer for rain, and so I have a rain cloud coming up and lightning shooting out of it, and a drummer is sitting on the lightning, and up above is actually the constellation of the Milky Way, because all of our ceremonies are actually based off of the stars. And so over here I actually have another piece. It's all done in a black ballpoint pen, and it took me approximately 4 months to complete this one. This is also one of my newer pieces, and it took approximately 2 months to complete this, and this is all in a black ballpoint pen as well. I actually went to school at the Institute of American Indian Arts in 2010, and there they only wanted us to have the high-end art supplies, but then I couldn't afford all of that, and so I went to the dollar store, bought a pack of ballpoint pens, and at the time Sharpies were only $10 at Walmart, so bought that. And a lot of my instructors actually told me that it's not fine art. It's not going to get me anywhere. Museums will not take it. You know, it won't be accepted into fine art shows. But as you can see, I won first place at the Prescott Indian Market for Sharpie markers and a ballpoint pen. And so I guess I choose the medium because I want to show the world that you don't need, you know, high-end, expensive art supplies to create art. Art is, you know, something that comes from within. And so give me, you know, something from a dollar store, and this is what I can create. Kind of made me feel like, well, I'm gonna show them. And so about, I would say, 13 years later of working with ballpoint pen and Sharpies, this is where it's gotten me. So, you know, I should be as good as I am. Yeah, working at, you know, that long. My next biggest show that I got coming up is the Herd Museum in March in Phoenix. And so my next big piece that I'm working on is probably a little bit bigger than this, and I'm gonna have nothing but animals, also with the animal kachinas as well, because it shows that I can do animals, people, and it shows a variety of different textures, and I believe I can, you know, do all that all in one piece, and I think I can, you know, really impress some people. I prefer Bic, like a Bic ballpoint pen, just because the ball rolls a lot smoother and the ball's a lot bigger. So, you know, I'm able to control how much ink is released based on how much pressure I apply. So that's what I like. A lot of people just like to see, you know, the results of all of this, but they don't see the work and the time that I put into it. And so, you know, I think that a lot of people, you know, they tend to forget how much time and how much, you know, effort it takes to create works of art like this. And so there are days when I do not feel like drawing, I do not feel like doing anything, and those are the days that I work the hardest. Yeah, so
on the homelands of Tohono O'odham and Peeposh, Demi Dupavillon, ICT News.
We head now to Capitol Hill, where a fractured Republican Party has still not elected a House Speaker. ICT regular contributor Holly Cook Macarro joins us now virtually to share the latest on this and where the party stands. She is the founding principal and president of The Angle, and she is also a board member of Indig Public Media, the parent company that owns ICT and the ICT Newscast. It's great to see you, Holly.
Good to see you, Aaliyah.
We are recording this newscast on Wednesday, October 23rd at about 1 p.m. Eastern time, so I just want to start off there. But tell us where we're at in trying to elect a new speaker.
Well, yesterday was an interesting day when I think Tom Emmer was the nominee for about 10 hours. And the politics that went down there are fascinating. And right now we have a vote going on the floor of the House for the current GOP nominee, Mike Johnson from Louisiana. And I'd like to dig in a bit about who he is, but I'm not quite sure that's a good use of our time, given how we've seen them come and go so quickly over the last week. I'm looking at the vote, though, and today might be the day that we have a new speaker. He's progressing quite nicely at the moment, and it's possible by the end of this newscast we'll have some results there. But I think as we proceed, and I made a comment earlier in that part of his success might be that so few people know him that they don't have anything to hold against him yet. And what we saw bear out yesterday, when it looked like Tom Emmer was on a solid track to become the speaker, and then former President Trump weighed in against him, thereby exerting and demonstrating still the sort of influence he has over the Republican Party. And it is been really a game in watching that, right? He didn't have enough to pull. He strongly backed Jim Jordan, but his support wasn't enough to get Jim Jordan across the finish line. But yesterday, that political flex, when he sank Tom Emmer's bid to become speaker in just a few minutes, is a very strong indication of the sort of influence that he still wields over the Republican Party in the House of Representatives. So that is all of this reading of the tea leaves, I think, is something we all get to watch and learn a little bit more about as this process plays out publicly. And I'm hopeful as I look, she's still proceeding nicely. So I think we may be hearing a bit more about Mike Johnson in the next few days.
Holly, I should back up and say that it's Wednesday, October 25th. I think with all this, the votes, my brain was pulling me one way and the other way, but it's Wednesday, October 25th.
I didn't even catch it.
Do you suspect that Representative Mike Johnson will get any Democratic votes?
No. The Democratic caucus has held firmly together, both all through the, 15 McCarthy votes, 18. And I expect that they will do that again, and their support will be for Hakeem Jeffries.
And if the House were to elect a speaker, what do you think are the highest items of priority to look at immediately after a speaker is elected?
They will, the budget, the current spending resolution, the authorization for that prevented the government from shutting down, was extends through November 17th. So they are going to have to immediately begin work on a spending agreement. And I don't see that they've passed a new set of what they call the rules package, which defines how the House is run. And as I pointed out a couple of 3 weeks ago, that rules package is foundationally what created the weakness that allowed 8 Republicans to remove Kevin McCarthy from his speakership. So, and it was because of his concessions in the spending bill, and in combination with some other concessions as well. But we see that same fight coming again. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this new speaker, if and when we have one, deals with those same issues in a spending bill, because there has to be agreement given these very narrow margins in the House and Senate.
I want to switch gears and talk about the election. We saw that former Navajo Nation President Jonathan Nez is running for a seat to represent Arizona's 2nd Congressional District. Preview that race for us, and what were your high-level takeaways when you found out the news?
Well, one, I was very glad to see that former President Nez has jumped in the race. It's a tough race. It leans Republican, but it is something I talk about often, in that we need to begin building a foundation of our own Indigenous political power. And that is participating, becoming seasoned candidates, working with the party. And in my opinion, it's a travesty that we haven't sent someone from the Navajo Nation to the Congress yet. Part of that is a result of redistricting, or the way the congressional districts are drawn in the state of Arizona, that continually fractionates, the power of the Navajo Nation, and that vote in one district So I'm really glad to see that. I hope that there is a good structure behind there, and I'm sure he will gain the support of Indian country. He has a very strong voice, a strong track record of leadership. And like I said, it's a tougher race leaning Republican, but I think Indian country could make that race a fight.
Something really interesting about that district is that it has a large number of tribal nations in it.
Yes, and which is why I say I think Indian country could make that race a fight. Should former President Nez, I think we still call him President Nez, old habits, but the do well and poll well and really make this competitive. I think Indian country will be both supportive financially, but on the ground, turning out that vote, there will be enthusiasm. Particularly because of one, supporting someone from our communities.
Holly, I'm so sorry to cut in here,
okay.
but that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much as always.
Thank you, Aaliyah.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. For all the latest, visit ictnews.org. From all of us in the newsroom, stay safe, my relatives.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.